If your own family chose the person who stole your identity over you, what would you do? I'm Paige Turner, 29, working in marketing in Colorado Springs. For a while, I lived in the guest house behind my parents' place, saving for my own home while paying $1,500 every month toward their mortgage. It was an arrangement that felt fair, balanced, stable. That stability shattered when my younger brother showed up broke, drowning in gambling losses and party bills. Suddenly, my parents expected me to bail him out. They said it was my responsibility to keep the family steady while he kept spending like nothing had happened. I said no. They kept insisting that family sticks together no matter what. One night, everything exploded. My dad's face flushed red as he yelled, "Get out. And don't come back." The look in his eyes told me he meant it. The weight in my chest told me I did too. I packed my things and left without turning around. A few weeks later, my mom called in a panic, asking why I'd stopped sending money for the mortgage. What I said made her go silent. Curious? Stay with me. It only gets wilder from here. Tell me where you're watching from. Like and subscribe if you want to see how this family drama unfolds. Before it all unraveled, life had a steady rhythm. Then Noah reappeared one afternoon, duffel bag in hand and excuses spilling out behind him. I'd been focused on my career at a local ad agency, long hours polishing campaigns, leading client presentations, managing a big regional account. Every paycheck went straight into savings for my own place, though $1,500 of it went to my parents' mortgage, so I could stay in the guest house. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a step toward independence. Most nights, I was at my desk tweaking copy or reviewing analytics, picturing the home I'd one day buy. My routine was simple: work hard, save more, repeat. I even cut out my regular coffee runs just to stretch my budget further. Then Noah crashed back into our lives. He'd lost his bartending job in Denver and showed up smelling like cheap cologne and debt. Thousands gone on designer clothes, online gambling, buying rounds for strangers. I overheard him bragging about an $800 leather jacket while I struggled to keep up with the mortgage payments. He didn't apologize. He just wore that same smug smile and promised he'd figure it out. I'd seen this before. Since he was 19, he'd been running to our parents, Gary and Cheryl Turner, for emergencies that usually meant concerts or nights out. At dinner one night, I tried to stay calm.
"He needs a job," I said.
"We can't keep rescuing him." Mom gently set down her fork. "He's going through something. We're family. We'll handle it together." Dad's jaw tightened like I was the unreasonable one. Noah had always been their golden child. I was the dependable one. So when things went wrong, it was assumed I'd clean up the mess. They didn't say it outright, but the expectation hung heavy. I should dip into my savings and fix this. The idea made me sick. I'd spent years building that account. I wasn't about to let it disappear because he couldn't control himself. But the pressure didn't stop. Mom slipped daily reminders about loyalty and giving him a little help to get back on his feet. Dad was more blunt. "You're doing well," he'd say, like my paycheck belonged to everyone. I kept explaining my savings were for my future, not his debts. It never mattered. Every conversation ended the same. Them defending him, me biting back frustration to avoid another blow-up. Even my job started suffering. I was leading a campaign with a brutal deadline, already exhausted. After one of Mom's guilt-soaked calls, I walked into a client meeting distracted and mixed up the budget numbers. My boss pulled me aside afterward, concern etched across his face, asking if everything was okay. I forced a smile and said yes. It was a lie. I'd sit at my desk staring at spreadsheets, calculating in my head. How long could I keep paying their mortgage while Noah kept draining us? My savings had stalled. Every time I checked the balance, resentment crept deeper. I tried talking to Noah directly. One evening, he was sprawled on the couch scrolling his phone. "You need to stop spending," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I'm not saving you this time." He barely looked up, mumbling about a job he was about to land. When I pressed him how much he owed who he owed, when he'd pay it back, he shrugged it off and started rambling about a party. My hands shook as I walked away. Same lies. Same pattern. The guest house, once my sanctuary, felt suffocating. At night, I'd lie awake listening to the heater hum, wondering how I became the family's safety net. Their favorite line echoed in my mind. We're in this together. But it didn't feel like together. It felt like me holding everything up while they backed him without question. I kept working, kept saving, kept paying the mortgage. But the strain was cracking me. Something had to give. About a week after that conversation, a strange credit card bill arrived mixed in with my mail. It was addressed to me from a bank I'd never used. My fingers trembled as I tore it open. Nearly $5,000 in charges. Bar tabs. Online gaming. A rental car. All under my name. Linked to my social security number. I'd never opened that account. There was no question who had. His recklessness had crossed into my life completely. My credit. My future. I stormed into the main house, statement clenched tight. He stood in the kitchen heating leftovers like nothing was wrong. You used my name? I demanded quietly, but sharply. You opened a credit card and spent $5,000? What is wrong with you? He paused, then leaned back against the counter with a shrug. It's not a big deal. I needed cash. I'll fix it. The nerve. Fix it. I shot back. You destroyed my credit. That's fraud. He rolled his eyes. You've got money. Just pay it off for now. I couldn't believe it. Not only was he avoiding responsibility, he expected me to clean it up. You're calling the bank and telling them what you did, I said, voice trembling but steady. Or I will. His smirk disappeared. You're so selfish, he snapped. Always acting superior. That's not what this is, I said firmly. You crossed a line. Fix it or I report it. He grabbed his plate and walked off, muttering under his breath. I stood there shaking, realizing just how deep the betrayal went. He hadn't just borrowed money. He'd stolen my identity. That night, I called the bank. I kept my voice even while panic churned inside me. They confirmed the account had been opened 3 weeks earlier using my information. I told them it wasn't me. They flagged it as fraud and told me to freeze my credit immediately. For hours, I sat at my computer locking everything down with Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. Each step felt like damage control for something I never did. This wasn't just about a few $1,000s. It was my future. If my credit tanked, the house I'd worked toward could vanish. And I was still paying $1,500 a month for my parents' mortgage. The next morning, I laid it all out for Mom and Dad. We sat in the living room, the silence heavy. I placed the statement on the coffee table and explained everything, the fraud, the charges, the identity theft. He used my information, I said evenly. This could ruin my credit. You have to make him stop. Mom's face fell. Her hands twisted together. He didn't mean to, she whispered. He's under a lot of stress. Ist her, stunt. Dad leaned forward, jaw tight. You're blowing this out of proportion. Pay it off. We'll handle him later. It felt like being slapped. They weren't just defending him. They were dismissing the fact that he'd committed a crime against me. You're not listening, I said, my voice rising. This isn't about money. He broke the law. Mom shook her head, eyes glossy. Don't talk about your brother like that. Dad's expression hardened. You have a solid job. You can handle it. Stop making this into drama. The injustice burned through me. I was paying their mortgage, holding everything together. And somehow, I was the problem for standing up for myself. I walked out of that room, my hands shaking, and my hands were trembling, the statement still crushed in my fist. Once again, they'd chosen him. The only place that still felt remotely mine was work, but even that was starting to slip. My boss had just handed me a huge opportunity, lead a national campaign, my chance to prove I was ready for a senior strategist promotion. The pitch was due in 10 days. But I couldn't focus. My mind kept replaying everything, the fraudulent charges, Mom's excuses, Dad brushing it off. I stayed late most nights, staring at design mock-ups that blended together while my thoughts spiraled. During a team meeting, I froze when someone asked about projected budgets. All I could think about was the fraud claim I'd filed. My boss shot me a confused look. I forced a tight smile and said I'd follow up later. I couldn't let this destroy my shot. Back in the guest house, I paced. The walls felt closer than ever. What my brother had done wasn't just hurtful, it made everything clear. I couldn't stay here, under their roof, tied to their blind loyalty. The place that once symbolized progress now felt like a cage. I'd locked down my credit, but I knew it was only a matter of time before he crossed another line. My parents' refusal to hold him accountable told me everything. As long as I stayed, I'd be expected to clean up every disaster he created. The idea of living that cycle over and over made my skin crawl. I needed to leave, even if it meant starting from zero. A few days later, Dad called a family meeting. The second I stepped into the living room, I felt it, the tension thick and suffocating. Mom sat hunched on the couch, wringing her hands. My brother lounged in an armchair, scrolling through his phone like none of this concerned him. Dad stood by the window, the fading Colorado Springs light casting shadows behind him. "We've got another problem," he said sharply. "Your brother's down $10,000. Gambling.
Shopping.
You're going to cover it, Paige, or you're out of the guest house." The number hit me like a punch. 10,000. On top of the credit card mess. "I'm not paying for this," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "I've done more than enough." My hands shook, but I stood firm. My brother didn't even glance up. Mom finally spoke, her voice thin. "He's trying. He just needs help to get back on his feet. Family takes care of each other." Sacrifices. I shot back, sharper than I meant to. "I've been sacrificing for years. When does he step up?" Dad's eyes narrowed. "You have a good job. You can afford it. Stop making this a fight." I turned to my brother. He lazily lifted his head, that smug look still there. "You've drained $10,000, I said, my voice shaking. "And I'm supposed to fix it? Say something." He shrugged. "Not my fault things got tough. You just think you're better than everyone." The words stung, but I didn't let it show.
"This isn't about me."
"You crossed a line. I'm done cleaning up after you." He rolled his eyes and went back to his phone. I looked at Dad, hoping for some sign of reason. He's not even trying. Why am I paying for this? Dad stepped forward, his voice booming. "Because you're part of this family. Either you help or you pack up and leave. And don't come back." The room went silent. Mom gasped and grabbed his arm, but he pulled away. My heart pounded. I expected an argument, but not an ultimatum. Not a choice between my future and my home. Tears burned my eyes, not from sadness, but from the crushing realization. They had chosen him. Again. "Paige, please," Mom whispered. "We need to stay united. He'll figure it out." "You're not helping him," I said, my throat tight. "You're enabling him. You're letting him drag us down, and I'm the one paying for it." I looked at my brother. "You don't even care." He didn't respond. Didn't even look up. I walked out, my footsteps echoing down the hallway. Back in the guest house, the air felt colder. $10,000. Another demand. Another rescue mission. I sat on the edge of my bed, my thoughts racing. Years of helping. Months of mortgage payments. All of it meant nothing. I wasn't a daughter. I was insurance.
His debts.
Their excuses. The endless cycle. As long as I stayed, it would never end. The guest house wasn't security anymore. It was an anchor tying me to dysfunction. I thought about the campaign at work, the promotion within reach. Staying wouldn't just cost money. It would cost my peace, my future, maybe even who I was becoming. I picked up my phone and called my best friend from college, Lindsay Wade. "Paige, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice steady and warm. Everything spilled out. The ultimatum. The $10,000. My brother's indifference. My mom's pleading. "They chose him," I said, my voice breaking. "You don't deserve that," Lindsay said firmly. "You need to leave. For good." Her words hit hard because they were true. Staying meant more guilt, more demands, more pieces of myself disappearing. I stared at the walls that once felt safe. Leaving would mean dipping into my savings. Starting over. But staying would cost so much more. Can we talk tomorrow?
I asked.
I need to figure out how to get out.
Anytime.
I've got you. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than exhaustion. A small spark of hope. The guest house wasn't home anymore. It was a chain, and I was finally ready to break it. Dad had drawn his line. Now I would draw mine. The next morning, I met Lindsay at a coffee shop downtown. The hum of conversation and the smell of espresso filled the air, but all I could hear was Dad's ultimatum replaying in my head. I told her everything again. The $10,000. The shouting. The feeling of being completely abandoned. You can't live like that, she said. They're using you.
Move in with me.
It's small, but there's room. Her offer felt like oxygen. I hadn't even thought of it, but suddenly it sounded like freedom. I gripped my coffee and ran the numbers in my head. Splitting rent with Lindsay would be about $1,000 a month, far less than the $1,500 I was giving my parents. I'd still need to cover that mortgage payment until I untangled myself completely, but it was a start. My down payment savings would shrink. I'd been maybe a year away from buying a place. Leaving might push that back another year or two. But staying meant more guilt, more chaos, more of my brother's recklessness swallowing everything I'd built. I looked at Lindsay and nodded. It's worth it. I have to go. Later at work, I grabbed lunch with Colin Hayes, a coworker who'd become a close friend. Between bites, I told him about the ultimatum. You're killing it here, he said, shaking his head. You're on track for senior strategist. Don't let them drag you down. His confidence steadied me. Work was the one place I wasn't failing someone else's expectations. You're right, I said. It's time I focus on my own life. Leaving is the right call, he said. You've got this. That was it. Decision made. Over the next few days, I quietly prepared. I didn't tell my family. I scrolled rental listings at night, keeping Lindsay's apartment as my main option, with a small studio nearby as backup. Her one-bedroom in central Colorado Springs was cozy, within walking distance of the agency, affordable if I tightened my spending. I packed in silence. Clothes into duffel bags. Books into labeled boxes, so my brother wouldn't snoop. Every item packed felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Meanwhile, the main house carried on like nothing had happened. Mom and Dad acted normal. My brother drifted through each day carefree. I called a local moving company and booked a small van for the end of the week. $400 for a quick move across town. It hurt to dip into my savings, but it felt like paying for freedom. To avoid suspicion, I kept my routine the same. Breakfast with Mom. Small talk with Dad about work. Even a smile when necessary. But inside, I was already gone. I kept a courteous smile on my face, even tossed one in my brother's direction. From the outside, everything looked normal. Inside, I was coming apart, questioning every move. What if I couldn't handle rent? What if my career faltered right when I needed it most? Whenever doubt crept in, I heard Dad's voice again. Cold and absolute. Get out. I wouldn't stay somewhere I wasn't wanted. Lindsay and I planned everything through late-night texts. She sent over her lease for me to review and promised to clear out half her closet. We'll make it fun, she wrote, adding a string of upbeat emojis. Her optimism steadied me. I went to the bank and removed myself from the family's joint account. The teller walked me through closing my access, so my brother couldn't reach another dollar of mine. Walking out of that branch felt like breaking the final link in a chain. By Friday, it was set. New address. Tight budget. Moving day scheduled. I'd move in with Lindsay, split expenses, and rebuild from scratch. The guest house that once felt secure now felt like dead weight. I was ready to let go. I was scared. But beneath the fear was something stronger, a quiet sense of control returning. Saturday morning came gray and still. The house was empty. My parents and brother had left for a cousin's wedding, exactly as I'd counted on. I stood alone in the guest house, heart racing but certain. This was my window. Lindsay's old hatchback rolled into the driveway, Colin right behind her in a rented van. We had a few hours before my family returned. I'd timed everything precisely. I was only taking what mattered, clothes, a handful of books, my laptop, a small box of keepsakes. The rest, old furniture, decorations, fragments of a life that no longer fit, I left behind without hesitation. It felt like shedding an old skin. Lindsay hugged me quickly. "Let's do this," she said, grabbing a bag. Colin was already loading boxes. "You're making the right call," he said, carefully placing my laptop in the van. We worked fast under a light drizzle, shoes splashing against the driveway. I kept glancing at the main house, half expecting the door to swing open. It stayed silent. By noon, everything was loaded. The 15-minute drive to Lindsay's apartment in central Colorado Springs felt like crossing into a different life. Her place felt warm, alive, smelling faintly of coffee. Colin carried the last boxes up the narrow stairs, joking about getting his workout in. Lindsay shoved hangers aside in her closet.
"See?
"Plenty of room," she said with a grin. By mid-afternoon, it was done. Books stacked on a borrowed shelf. My laptop open on the kitchen counter. For the first time in months, I breathed deeply without bracing for impact. I sat at the desk and pulled out a sheet of paper.
Mom and Dad,
"I've moved out. I've been paying $1,500 toward your mortgage, but you told me to leave. I'm no longer responsible for this family or for my brother's debts. I'm done."
Short, clear.
Final. I folded it, set it on the desk, and locked the door behind me. The click echoed like the end of a long chapter. As I drove away, relief washed through me, loosening a knot I'd carried for months. I could breathe. Lindsay's apartment wasn't my dream house, but it was a fresh start. My savings were finally protected from my brother's chaos. The sting of my parents choosing him still lingered, but it faded with every mile. In the rearview mirror, the guest house shrank until it disappeared. I let out a shaky laugh. I'd actually done it. I was free. Then the adrenaline faded, and unease crept in. What would happen when they got back? Mom's tears. Dad's anger. My brother's blank stare. Would they read the letter? Would they even care? I pushed the thoughts aside. Lindsay and Colin were waiting with greasy pizza and laughter. That was enough for tonight. When I pulled into the apartment lot, the van's engine ticked as it cooled. Lindsay leaned over the balcony, waving. Colin was inside arranging a spare chair for me. This wasn't the future I'd once mapped out, but it was the one I chose. Messy, maybe, but mine. 3 weeks later, that fragile piece shattered. My phone lit up with frantic messages from Mom. "Paige, we're in trouble. The bank is threatening foreclosure. Please call." My coffee went cold as I stared at the screen. They'd read the note. They'd realized the $1,500 payments had stopped. A notice had arrived, 30 days to pay or lose the house. My stomach tightened, not with guilt, but with a strange mix of pity and finality. I'd carried them for years. Now they were feeling the weight themselves. That evening, Mom called. Her voice shook. "Paige, we need you. Just cover the mortgage a little longer. We'll fix it." I stood by the window, looking out over the lights of Colorado Springs. "You told me to leave," I said calmly. "I'm not responsible for your choices or his." She started pleading. "Your brother's trying. He just needs more time. I'm done fixing his mistakes." I cut in. "You made your decision." And I hung up. My heart raced, but the air felt lighter. A door had closed. A few days later, a cousin filled me in. My brother hadn't changed. Still avoiding work. Still maxing out credit cards. My parents scrambling to keep up mortgage, utilities, car payments, even gambling debts he claimed were handled. The $10,000 Dad demanded from me had been only the beginning. The foreclosure warning wasn't empty. The house was truly at risk. For a moment, I felt a flicker of sadness, imagining Mom's sleepless nights, Dad's frustration. But I stopped myself. They had chosen this. They'd enabled him. The consequences were theirs. The tension at home had exploded.
Constant arguments.
Dad blaming Mom for shielding my brother. Mom accusing Dad of pushing me away. Their once solid marriage cracking under pressure. Dad was ready to cut my brother off completely. Mom still insisted he deserved another chance. And my brother? Still spending. Still promising to change. While they unraveled, I rebuilt. Lindsay's apartment became a sanctuary. Creaky floors, chipped mugs, mismatched furniture, somehow warmer than the guest house ever was. At work, I poured everything into the campaign. Late nights. Endless revisions. A nerve-wracking pitch that left my palms sweating. It paid off. A week later, my boss called me in. "You're our new senior strategist," she said, smiling in a way she rarely did. The promotion came with a raise, enough to start restoring my savings and finally breathe easier. Walking out of her office, pride swelled in my chest. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was moving forward. I hadn't spoken to my parents or my brother since that call. I blocked their numbers, not out of spite, but to protect myself. Every plea felt like a hook trying to drag me back. Lindsay reminded me constantly that I'd made the right choice. One night, surrounded by takeout cartons and easy laughter, she said, "You're thriving, Paige. Don't let them pull you under again." Colin celebrated my promotion with a grin and a high five at work. Their belief in me showed me something important. I didn't need my family's approval to be whole. Looking back, the truth is simple. Drawing boundaries wasn't cruel. It was necessary. Guilt had kept me tied to their problems for years. I finally broke free. Their foreclosure. Their arguments. The chaos at home. Those burdens weren't mine anymore. I felt stronger. Not because I'd won, but because I'd chosen myself. My life now isn't perfect, but it's peaceful, stable, built on my terms. To everyone who's been listening to my story, thank you. Walking away from family is never easy, but sometimes it's the only way to protect your sanity and your peace. What would you have done in my place? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support means everything.